The man said he was at work. Why the heck did it take 30 years for his defense team to look at the security footage?
When will women learn that it's not a good idea to fall in love with a prison inmate?
Dennis Quaid is a pretty big name. Will this sadistic serial killer role get him off the Hollywood blacklist?
Are people way off base with their opinions of this show or right on the money?
Time to solve the case. Red and Red Real Reviews investigates Happy Face on Paramount Plus.
Ahoy, ladies! I didn't see you there. Would you guys like to set sail on this ocean of flavor?
Randall, look at eye contact. You're gonna be cool, right?
Oh, baby, I'm as cool as the other side of the pillow.
Been staring at this board for days.
When you play the Game of Thrones, you win or you die.
Act. Bears eat beets.
My brain is on fire. I'm dying.
I am the one who knocks.
Bears. Beets. Battlestar Galactica.
When they say 2% milk, I don't know what the other 98% is.
It's hard to believe we're even the same species.
You know nothing, Jon Snow.
Oh my god. The microchip has been compromised.
Dracarys.
Welcome back. Another episode, the latest and greatest edition of Red and Red Real Reviews. And this one, I know you've been itching to cover something in the true crime genre. We didn't totally go that route because it's not really true crime, but it's like a fictionalized version of true crime. So I guess our usual question / answer to the audience is not necessarily should they watch Happy Face, but also is Paramount's version of Happy Face a good interpretation of the real life events of the Happy Face killer?
I mean, I actually, for being a true crime buff, I admittedly don't know tons about the Happy Face killer. I know a little bit, but I mean, I think that this was a pretty fictionalized version. And I think it says in the beginning, like, based on a true story or inspired by a true story, which makes you believe that they did change a lot.
Yeah.
And I kind of looked up some articles to figure out what exactly was changed, and they did significantly change a lot.
Yeah, it felt like it was very fictionalized. Like I'm sitting there watching it, not a true crime buff and knowing nothing about the real life case, and I'm sitting there watching like there is no way this happened 80% close to the real thing.
Yeah, so like some little things that were changed, they changed the names of the husband, the kids, so it wasn't Hazel and Max or whatever, it wasn't Ben. And then they changed the last name of Melissa. So I think in the show they call her Melissa Reed and she was Melissa Moore, really, I think. And then obviously they took the creative liberty of having Dr. Greg, who's a fake TV doctor, but in real life, the real Melissa shared her story on Dr. Phil and Dr. Oz, which I think I might have seen the Dr. Phil. And I think I also saw some sort of, I don't know if it was an True Hollywood story. It was like my parent is a murderer or my parent is a serial killer or something like that. So I saw Melissa. This was probably going back to 2005, 2006, somewhere around there. Some sort of TV special about the case. So yeah, it's been a while for me. I do know a little bit about Keith Jesperson, but this was interesting just because they really dug their creative hands into it to put some finesse into it, you could say.
Je ne sais quoi. And as far as like the flow of the case and the story, I mean, how much of that was dramatized for the screen versus an exaggeration? Okay, maybe this thing's true, but these 5 ways it played out in the show were not remotely accurate.
So obviously everything having to do with Hazel, was her daughter, was fictionalized. That whole thing about people thinking she was cool, that her grandpa was a serial killer. The real daughter was bullied in real life a little bit about it, but it wasn't a thing where like, oh, your grandpa's cool, so you're cool now too.
That
It wasn't that whole, and the whole thing with the boy at school, that was all just dramatized. And then the murder story that this show focused around was fictional as well, I believe.
the
There
Elijah.
was, there was no, I don't know if there was a case that was similar to this, the case of Heather in Texas, but the real Keith Jesperson did not travel in Texas at all. And I don't think that was a real story. So that part was all made up, where they were saying, oh, he's confessing to a ninth crime, even though he's confirmed 8. That whole thing is fake news.
Fake news. Throw him out. Get him out.
Fake news.
So speaking of Keith Jesperson, that role is played by Dennis Quaid, and I feel like Dennis Quaid is someone that doesn't get a lot of his name and his presence historically in Hollywood he has a long enough track record where people know his name, people know who he is, but I feel like, maybe again blacklisted a little bit more.
Right.
He's kind of been forgotten. So I almost feel like this was kind of a way for him to kind of get back into some gravitas role, because he really did pull off this sadistic character, this very manipulative man serial killer, and I almost kind of feel like maybe the award season might shine favorably on him.
I hope so. He played a really, really good creep. There were some parts where your skin kind of crawls. The earlier scenes where Melissa kind of first reconnects with him, and then by the finale when Melissa says she's done with him, that was pretty insane. The way that he acted, and of course, having a serial killer who has a family, that's a very layered person to begin with, but to play a character like that it's a big task. So a lot of people were saying that they thought that Dennis Quaid really carried the series and that the rest of the acting was just awful. And I disagree with that. I felt like, yes, Dennis Quaid was great, but I didn't feel like the other actors paled in comparison, or that they were terrible or any. Like, I've seen terrible shows, trust me. I've seen shows, that one that I just watched with Eddie Redmayne, I thought that the police woman in it was absolutely terrible as far as acting. So yeah, I mean, I've seen terrible shows. I did not think the acting was terrible. I didn't think the writing was terrible. I thought that the reviews were pretty rough on it.
Yeah.
I thought that Annaleigh Ashford, who plays Melissa, and then James Woke, who plays Ben, they were both great, I thought.
I thought the acting was pretty steadily high quality throughout this. Like, it didn't feel like there was a cheesy character or someone that was over their heads. And to me, like, the best way to sell that is their dynamics with each other. It never felt like any relationship in the show was disingenuous at any one point.
And even going to the kids acting, the actress who played Hazel, the young actor who played Max, they were, how in some shows and movies, kids can be really annoying, especially if they're not good actors. I thought the kids did a great job where they, A, weren't annoying, B, they made it seem believable. They weren't these cheesy actors where you're cringing at the words coming out of their mouth because it just doesn't go.
Yeah.
The writing doesn't match the children, which is a big problem in TVs and shows. It's like, you know that you have a 40-year-old person as the writer writing these lines for these kids, and that's obvious sometimes in shows, but I thought the kids did a great job. The acting was never, and even all the side characters, Ivy and Dr. Greg, like it was never cringeworthy to be like, oh my God, like they're acting. They're terrible.
No,
Never entered my mind, right?
yeah, and I think believable is the key word because like Hazel was very believable as this young teenage girl who's kind of led astray between
Mm,
her little love boy interest and then her newfound relationship with Keith, that sort of thing.
yeah, and even the relationship that the parents, Ben and Melissa, had with their kids, that was genuine to me. The way that Hazel's talking to her mom about this boy at school, and they had like a nice open relationship, and it just showed that when you grow up with your father being a serial killer and you have to deal with that, and then you want to have your own family and not repeat that pattern and kind of break off from that, it shows that you can be a good parent, you know?
Yeah. And with Melissa, I mean, I feel like her role was her like ongoing discovery of how do I reconcile this relationship with my father and figure out what angle he's playing. I thought that was so pivotal to her character arc because she's kind of a square peg in a round hole
Mm,
kind of thing. Like she's only involved in uncovering this murder, this cold. I don't want to call it a cold case, but you know this
mm,
kind of mistaken murder investigation. She's only kind of thrown in there because of her father,
mm.
her ties to her father. She's not a TV producer. She's not an
Yeah.
investigative journalist. You know, anything like that. She's not a detective, but she's able to like navigate all these kind of wrenches thrown in the mix as far as okay, we figured out that's not Elijah, but all of a sudden now we don't think it's Keith either, and why is he taking the blame for something that wasn't his? Like, so like and she kind of the actress kind of really deftly navigated that kind of obstacle course of all these different uh, kind of screwballs, for lack of a better word.
And I think she made it believable. It's kind of unbelievable the fact that you could be a makeup artist on a TV show and then suddenly people know about your past and your serial killer dad wants you to get involved with this case and your show wants to investigate it and they're like, okay, well, you're a makeup artist, but we trust you with this, so you're going to be a acting producer basically.
Yeah,
That whole situation is sort of unbelievable, but she acknowledged it as, okay, I'm a fish out of water, like I'm just a makeup artist, what do I know? But she had a connection to people. And I did read that, that scene where Dr. Greg says, okay, let's have this dinner over my house, and she's like, oh, she doesn't realize it's all about her and the
yeah,
people are flying in to see her. And then she has that moment with one of the servers where the server says, oh, my brother or father was in prison for murder or something like that. And they have this connection where she realizes that she can help people. So that didn't actually happen, but it was a fictionalized representation of what she's dealt with over the years. Like she's had, I think she currently has a podcast. I think she's written books and things like that. And that's been her experience when people approach her and say, oh, wow, your story really resonated with me because I have this parent or this relative who's a criminal or a murderer, and that was made to represent those connections she's had in the past.
yeah, and she, eh, like especially her like kind of wherewithal through this with the kind of bringing Carl's tie to this to light at the end,
Mm,
where she was able to like set her phone up
yeah.
and record the whole thing. So it's kind of like she's developed all these skills that aren't her skills, and kind of pulls it off.
Yeah, and she's in having her dad sort of trick her into participating in this
Mhm.
investigation. She's sort of found her niche in the world, where
Yeah.
she sort of found where she's supposed to be, no matter how much she thinks that, oh, I don't want anything to do with him, I don't want anything to do with this world. It's sort of been her calling that she's found.
Yeah, like it just put an inquisitive mind into the right scenario, and then all of a sudden the gears start to go. But to that point, it's interestingly enough that she's, at the end, she's like, "We're cutting ties. That's it. We're never speaking to
Mm.
you again." But to your point, it's almost like Keith was still successful in what he was trying to do, even if it was, manipulative and self-serving a little bit in his own right. Like his goal of trying to show her to the world and make her a star, in his own words, so more or less, that he was still successful in that.
Yeah, that's the irony of it, is that even though he's a serial killer and he's in prison for the rest of his life, he somehow has the correct judgment to figure out what his own child as a parent is made for or meant for,
Yeah,
which is sort of interesting.
especially since like he couldn't he still couldn't walk back with, as like dastardly as he was, he still couldn't walk back uh, a good not a good enough excuse, because it's not something one can really justify, but he still wasn't able to craft something to tell her to explain away the incident with her as a baby.
Yeah, which
So
that
like,
was that last moment when he's like, I didn't know who you were yet. Like
yeah,
basically you were just a baby that I wanted gone because I didn't know your personality and I didn't know
yeah,
you very well because you were an infant, basically.
right. It's kind of like it was kind of like a veiled way of him admitting to her that yes, I am the monster everyone says I
Mm.
am, because this was one way he couldn't twist the words into something more glamorous, for lack of a better word.
No, or clever. I mean, there's nothing you can say for that,
Hmm.
finding that out.
Yeah. Um. Well, as far as finding things out are concerned, like as we were speaking earlier about the true events that are fictionalized, and kind of, you know, some things you're watching and you kind of get the true crime vibe from it, but other things you're watching and it still feels like a fictional mystery. Like if I
Mm.
didn't know the happy face killer was a thing, I would have watched this and just thought it was a completely original script. Um, so and I was going so like they were kind of going to things that we both thought were tells that we picked out as the case was becoming known. I don't want to call them like wow or shocker moments, but things like, oh, okay, this is important. The tide's turning here. So I was going back over my notes and I realized that, as they kept coming back to the Whiskey River, there was a scene I had forgotten about where Melissa approached, I guess it must have been Cody and Carl, even though I didn't remember recognizing them
Mm.
from earlier, where they got very defensive about Melissa and her team rummaging around the bar. So I almost feel like that could have been an Easter egg for at the end when she finds the Lorelei guitar head.
Oh yeah, definitely. And I didn't really pick up on that either. By the time it got to the end, I started to suspect things, but I mean that was way at the end. I don't think there was really a clear moment when I realized that Keith wasn't responsible for Heather's murder.
Right.
But I mean, I think it was just a general vibe that I had where Keith just couldn't be trusted, and you knew that. And like even from the first episode, he's been mailing her daughter these drawings for years and cards and things like that, and she's just been shutting them away in a
Yeah.
box and intercepting them and before the daughter sees them. And he's clearly just desperate to have contact with his daughter. So, she shut him out of his life since she got pregnant or since she got married. So she's pretended he didn't exist, and he's not okay with that. So he goes through all the trouble to call the show where he demands to speak with her. And then he'll say, "Oh, well, I'll only tell you about this. I'll only confess to this ninth murder if I can talk to my daughter." So hearing that, you're kind of like, okay, you're probably not very reliable if you're just trying to weasel your way into your daughter's life. Like, why now? And why would you confess to this now? It was sort of a funny situation from the beginning.
Now, I think I don't want to use the term caricature, but I think that's almost a representation of why these people, as sadistic and twisted as they are, why they are successful at manipulating the people that were close to their, other lives. Because, like, you can see the pure goal inside all his tricks, where you think like, oh, he's just a father that wants to reconnect to his daughter. He's just, messed up in the head, and
Right.
he's a killer, he's a rapist, whatever the case may be. But like, you can also kind of see that split where behind all these dirty things is this purest goal, and you can kind of see why someone with maybe a kind heart has pity for them and puts themselves in a situation where they don't see the person who's lying, the person who's manipulating. Which is funny because you said that, and Melissa knows from the start, like, he's lying, he's
Right.
lying, he's lying, but she still goes along with it. So it's kind of like this balancing act of those two. I don't want to say metrics, but those two, like, behavioral aspects.
Yeah, and I think from the beginning, I think she literally says he's bullshitting you. That's bullshit what he's saying when she's talking to Ivy and Dr. Greg. And she knows to be skeptical of him from the beginning. It's just that because she's now connected with this case and possibly freeing this innocent man, then she's sort of like, okay, well, I know my dad is full of shit, basically, but I need to I need to kind of hold him right here at a comfortable distance so that I can find out more about this crime that he committed, so that I can help free this innocent man. So that's what he does. That's really smart, to set her up, giving her that obligation so that she feels obligated to speak with him to solve this crime, and to get this guy off the hook.
Yeah, and I think with the clearing of Elijah's name, I think the big thing that really started to move their goal of absolving him from that was the security footage, which I almost kind of, if I gotta go, like, if there's any kind of gripe that I had of the show, it's almost like the believability that could have been not, still uncovered 30 years later. Like, his alibi was that he was at work. Why would, as a defense attorney, your first, one of the first things you would go to, like, okay, let's find some kind of proof that he was at work.
Yeah, I did find that pretty convenient and easy, and I don't know if it was because I was just distracted or something. Like, I feel like I sort of missed, and it was sort of like an easily explained away thing, them finding that footage or getting a hold of that footage, and all of a sudden they had it, and I'm like, okay, well, wait, they
Yeah.
had Elijah working in the same room the whole entire time, and then they had this footage of Heather, huh?
Like,
Like,
I kind of get how, like, the tapes of Heather singing was kind of not thought of. I kind of get that because, one, you don't necessarily think of a complex security system footage in a bar where roadies and hitchhikers are performing. So you don't necessarily think of that kind of being a thing. But, and then on top of that, the fact that it's recorded or even still in existence for so many long. So like that I kind of get, and that kind of led them to juxtapose it against the work security footage. But I feel like his attorney from the case originally being brought from 30 years ago, like they should not have needed the Heather tape to, in my mind, to think let's go get security footage from work.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like these businesses, if you're just a little hole in the wall bar, you may or may not keep security footage at all. But maybe if you do keep it, you're going to keep it for what, a year, 5 years? You're not going to keep it for 30. Like who does that, and who has the room for that, or the know-how to do that, like the foresight to do that.
The age before digital, because if you remember from the room where all the footage was, they were physical tapes. So it's
Yeah,
just
yeah.
storing the physical tapes.
But you'd have to
But
have a lot of space for that to store
yeah,
all those physical tapes.
but to that point, I'm thinking in my head like they weren't necessarily used as security footage. They were like recordings of the artist in case, I guess, in case the artist ever wanted, hey, I really performed well. Can I have this tape to give to an
Mm,
agent or something? So I kind of get why like that wouldn't necessarily be uncovered. I just don't know why the other half of it.
yeah. Yeah. It just was a little bit one of those moments where you kind of roll your eyes or you yell at the TV. You're like, come on. Like they just found this footage
Yeah,
after 30 years. Come on. This is a little bit ridiculous.
the flip a table.
Yeah.
Yeah. And one of Melissa's other kind of tells she finds to me was Jillian's lipstick, and Jillian was kind of a weird character in this because
Yeah.
is that a thing, by the way?
What?
Like significant others. I don't want to necessarily say they're always women, although probably most of the time they are women that like become enamored with an inmate, with a convict, and they have this relationship from the outside and with the inmate. Is that a thing?
Are you kidding? Does bread go in a toaster and do you put butter on it? Yeah. Like it's very much a thing. And I think yeah, I mean I think it is more so with women. Obviously there's not as many female offenders, but if a good-looking female, we've had a few in true crime history, Jodi Arias, she was a psycho and she's cute and angelic and stuff. Does she have all these men writing her in prison? Maybe. So I mean, yeah, I think it exists with both sexes, but I would say that women are definitely more into it, and it's very, very much a thing. There's been so many male inmates that I mean, even I think Ted Bundy, because he was a by those standards, a normal, good-looking guy. Women wrote to him, and Scott Peterson, who allegedly killed his pregnant wife. He says he didn't do it. I think he did it, but he's still getting letters from women in prison, and he's been in prison for 20, 30 years at this point. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's very much a thing.
And maybe it's kind of that thing about how like uh a woman may feel like she needs to fix the man, and what better
Yeah.
case of a man to be fixed than one who's in prison for murder or rape or arson or some serious heinous crimes.
Right. I think it's that little belief in their head that's sort of saying to themselves, "Oh, but he probably has a good heart. I can
Yeah,
fix him."
yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, lady, wake up and smell the hummus.
Yeah, there's a lot of mentally ill women who have these relationships with men in prison. So the character of Jillian wasn't really unrealistic to me at all.
Yeah, and that whole thing where she finds her lipstick and she knows that that lipstick was only available at that little boutique in Miami that Jillian went to. It's
Mm,
almost like that was the unraveling point for Melissa to figure out, okay, my father didn't do this. He's the dangerous man. He's still a criminal. He's still a serial killer, but he didn't do this. So then she starts to, she confronts Joyce about it. That eventually leads her back to Whiskey River, the whole Cody stuff. So like that little bit of, I don't want to use the word Easter egg because in the character sense it's not an Easter egg, but like that little bit of clue was something to start the chain reaction of ideas, so to speak.
Yeah, and then the moment too with Bob and the evidence storage, where he says he finally fesses up that some woman came by or some, and when he said some woman, I'm thinking Jillian, and then we find out that Jillian fesses up. She wants to go in to see Keith when he's had the heart attack, and she fesses up that it was, yeah, and it was her niece that they got to talk to Bob and to arrange that whole thing. Her niece is an actress, and that's how they did it.
Yeah, almost like that. But her niece was never seen in the show, right? That was just
No,
kind of like
no.
yeah, I didn't think so. So it was almost kind of like well, this niece is like an estranged niece or something. Like, here, help me out, or is that someone they actually had a close relationship? I mean, not like we saw a lot of Jillian anyway. So
Yeah, we didn't see a lot of her, but you do sort of feel bad for her, especially in the way that Melissa and her brother are, there to see their father, and she comes up and she wants to go in, and Melissa's saying, he was manipulating you.
yeah,
All the things he said to you were not true. And Jillian kind of has that realization, and it's sad. I mean, you don't really like her character or know her character that well, but it's still sad that someone could, everything they believe this person that they love and they care about, and everything they've been told is a lie, and to see them realize that, it's still sad.
she goes from still holding the disbelief of it to that instant realization like pretty quickly.
Mm.
So, anything else that you picked out that were kind of like the tells, so to speak? Like, oh, this is important, or oh, this is a turning point.
I don't know if I had any other little turning points or indications that, obviously I've seen a million Datelines in 2020s, but I still don't feel like when I'm watching shows, especially like true crime shows, I'm not always in tune with, oh, this person's definitely lying, or this person's not telling the truth, or this isn't what it seems. So I'm kind of just looking at it as everyone else does. Sometimes I'll have that little nagging feeling that, okay, something is up here, I don't know what. And that's kind of what I feel like I had with this show. But I was just sort of glad that it focused on Melissa. It focused on the daughter of a serial killer. It wasn't like those other serial killer shows, which there have been a lot of them, especially like the Monster series on Netflix with the Menendez brothers and Jeffrey Dahmer, where it was very violent. They were showing the actual crimes from the point of view of the serial killer. We actually didn't see tons of Keith Jesperson's life. You know what I mean? We saw little bits and pieces, but we saw it through his daughter's eyes. So I did like that point of view a little bit better, even from a standpoint of plot and, figuring out what's going on. So yeah, I thought it was an interesting spin on, even though it was fictionalized, I thought it was an interesting spin on a serial killer, seeing it from a different point of view than you usually do.
Yeah, because even that scene where he has the flashback with his father and Smitty, and I was like, what? Like, is this like I'm like waiting for this to like give some layer of depth to Keith, and I'm just like, I don't see how this is giving us that. Like, there was nothing there that kind of gave me a different angle on why he was the way to Melissa or her mother that he was.
Well, what I saw from that moment is that's the moment when he became fascinated with death
Okay.
and dead bodies, because that was his godfather, I think,
Yeah.
right? Like his
And he,
dad's really good friend. And then he's poking him and he's touching him and stuff. And he's I think that was the first time he had seen a dead body, and that's he became like that was the moment he became fixated on it and was interested. What is this?
yeah, well, and his father even says when his father comes back in and he says like he's been talking to him. It's like, Keith, what are you doing? He's dead.
Yeah. Yeah, so that was a defining moment, I think. It was interesting they only showed one of those little flashbacks, but that to me was a defining moment of who Keith Jesperson is.
Yeah, all the other flashbacks were strictly related to, Melissa's kind of
Mm,
Easter eggs in her own brain, like with
right, the blood
the
on the
spaghetti sauce.
fan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the other thing is, this is kind of a limited series because it was that fictionalized take on a
Mm.
real life event. You would assume it would be a one-off. However, there was quite a wicked cliffhanger at the end there.
Yeah. So I I mean, this was, I think, done to be a limited series. And I think, based on what I've seen from what the creator said, they're not ruling out a second season. But that being said, just looking through the reviews, it's kind of mixed. So, like, I'm not sure people loved the show. And I sort of have a feeling it's not going to continue. I enjoyed it. I mean, I do think though that it seems like some people, were talking about the acting, talking about the writing, they didn't really enjoy it. And I actually only got really invested, I would say about halfway through. So like 4 out of 8 episodes, I was like, okay, like I really want to see what happens. Yeah, it took me a little bit to get invested.
I don't know if I got the same feeling from that. Is maybe I don't know if that is a difference in someone watching it from like watching a lot of true crime in the past, where like they have a certain expectation for what it's going to be, versus someone that's just watching it uh more with the fictionalized aspect being appealing, because obviously a real documentary is not fictionalized.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I've watched the Monsters show on Netflix, and I feel like the way that those end, and especially even like a true crime docu-series, the way that those end, I see the credits come on and I think I gotta watch the next episode now.
Hmm.
I mean, obviously, with true crime, there's a little bit more urgency of who did it, or this is a clue towards the right direction. So, I, yeah, I mean, I think there's a little more intent, like a little bit more of a cliffhanger with a true crime show. But yeah, I mean, I watched the first episode and I didn't really have that feeling. Not to say it was bad or anything, but it took me a few episodes before I was really into it, I would say, where I was like, okay, let me watch another one in one sitting.
I don't necessarily know if I was expecting that, because maybe I just had the perspective of this is kind of done as a building story. So I'm kind of like watching them with the intent of like I'm gonna continue watching it to find out what happens. Not necessarily like I don't need that hook to get me to come back, because like I know this is gonna be kind of a bit of a drawn out story just by the nature of the direction of it, the writing.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't think that the pacing was terrible or anything, but yeah, it did take a little bit to get chugging along and to get some momentum. I think when Ash came to the house and was talking to Max and that whole incident, I think that kind of turned the dial and turned the drama up a little bit. So that made me a little more excited, looking forward to, oh, I wonder what's going to happen next, you know?
Well, I feel like because the early episodes were pretty much very Elijah centric,
Yeah.
and to me, like that was the meat of the story when the show started. Is Elijah's innocence and that sort of thing, and Keith taking the fall for it. So I'm engaged in the Elijah story. The rest of it is just like add on after that. So I don't necessarily know that I don't necessarily feel like it took me a while to get invested, but it was like different aspects of the story to get invested in. So I think maybe it's a difference in the viewer's perception of which aspects of the story are appealing to them. Like if they don't have
Yeah.
any interest in the Elijah thing, then it's going to take a few episodes to get into it versus like, okay, this is what we're focused on because that's the storyline right now. That's the mission. So I'm engaged in it.
That's true. I guess people pick out what they relate to most. I mean, I did think the potential of freeing an innocent man was interesting to me, but also it was sort of like, okay, well, why is Keith so desperate to consult with his daughter on this? So, that was kind of more in the back of my mind, and the happenings with Melissa's family were a little bit more top of mind for me and relatable to me. But yeah, I don't know. I do think that the way that they ended it, they definitely left it open to a second season if they're picked up, but I kind of think it won't be picked up.
I would be intrigued to know if they were to pick it up again. Like how would they do that? Because Keith Jesperson, that's the Happy Face Killer's real name, right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
like there's kind of a natural limit on how they could continue the story with Keith Jesperson. Like it almost feels like every season would be a different serial killer, and maybe like Melissa and Ivy and that team will be the consistent thread throughout an ongoing series. Like they will just move on to a different serial killer, and then the story will be fictionalized for the silver screen.
Oh, I didn't think of it that way. I mean, that's an interesting take on it. They could do that, but from what I've heard, when the creator has been asked, and I think the real Melissa is involved with the show. She's not the creator of the show, but I think she works very closely with the creator. And the creator says that there are more things to explore. Melissa's got a lot of stories about her dad, so I don't know how they would do that. Obviously they left it at the fact that Melissa's like, I'm never talking to this dude again, and there is that phone call between Keith and Ben where Keith says, I know what you did or what you tried to do and it didn't work. And so Keith is still very much alive. In real life, he's very much alive. So, yeah, I mean, it's possible they would be able to take more creative liberties with more stories about Keith going forward, but my prediction is like how confident I am that they're going to pick it up for a second season. I'm at like 40%.
I mean, I would say even less than that just because of the practicality of it. It would have to be some kind of outside the box way to continue it, just because the phone call with Ben though is so weird though, because that's the type of thing that implies an immediate second season.
Yeah, that's why I was a little bit confused. I knew it was going to be 8 episodes and I thought it was going to be more finite than that. And when there was that scene with Ben picking up the phone and Keith confronting him, I was a little confused. I was like, they are ending it like that. I thought they were going to end it with a lot more finality, like a clear
Melissa
ending.
saying, we're done with you.
Yeah, like literally Melissa saying, I'm done with you. We're never going to see you again, and leave Keith, crying on the bed.
Dying in the hospital bed. Yeah, like it because I feel like how like you would really have to fictionalize a lot of Keith Jesperson's story to make that continue because it's like what's left here? Like are you going to go back and uncover all the past murders? Like it doesn't feel like there's enough meat on the bone left to continue the Keith story. Like they would have to continue the other characters on someone else's story.
That's how I feel about it. I think that they set it up to be a great 8-episode limited series, so that's why I was a little bit confused about the ending. But yeah, I just saw it as a limited show. I didn't see it as continuing more, and I don't think the demand is there.
And well, from that point, I think people are a little crazy because I thought it was a good show. So I don't necessarily. I think people are a little crazy saying that it was a poorly done show.
They were a little rough on it for sure. I agree.
The other thing, of course, as we talk about like the real Melissa, you brought up the fact that she's written books, she's been on podcasts, whatever the case may be. So, and there's this moment at the end where she goes over her new gig with Dr. Greg. She's going to continue to work with Ivy on all these other cases. And like I said, like maybe like that's the way they kind of continue the series, even though it's not the happy face killer. But is that kind of the show's interpretation of what the real Melissa did post this case?
Probably. That's what I think is, especially, I don't think she had a hand in casting the real Melissa, but like I said, she is very close contact with the creator. So I think she does give her 2 cents about things that happened or things that she wants to happen. And that's what my guess is that that's what she wanted to represent how, I think maybe it was 2008 that's when she publicly came out and said, yes, my dad is the happy face killer. And I think, yeah, just talking to people and being around. And then obviously since podcasts were invented and started becoming big, I think she has her own podcast. So yeah, I saw that as her advising the creator and the writers to be like, that's the ending that really happened. To have Melissa in the show arrive at that ending where she's kind of found her calling and she's going to be a TV producer of this true crime segment now, that's sort of what I want to happen, because that's pretty much what happened in real life.
Well, if you think we found our calling with this podcast, please, we would very much appreciate a 5-star review and let us know what you think of every episode. You can find those episodes if you're on the go on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and iHeartRadio, and if you want to see the Ginger Greatness on YouTube and Rumble. Do you have questions? Do you have comments? Do you want to tell us we're brilliant? Do you want to give us some shit talk? In either event, email us Red and Red Real Reviews, that is the letter N and real with 2 E's at gmail.com. Follow her at Binge the Ginge, that is dots between the words, on Instagram, and all one word on TikTok. And yours truly, Nutmeg 2 Palmetto, that is the number 2 on both platforms. Next up, drama abound on vacation. Will these friendly couples survive each other? Find out when we recap the limited series, The 4 Seasons, on Netflix. Until the next Real Review, Ben and Red are signing out.
In less than an hour, aircraft from here will join others from around the world.
Don't act so surprised, Your Highness.
Hey guys, you ready to let the dogs out?
What? Do what?
No. Try not. Do. Or do not.
Because I don't want those scrubs.
Let the dogs out, like, who let the dogs out? Who?
Who brought this guy along?
I can go slow ahead. Come on down and chump some of this shit.
One more thing. Do me a favor. Don't go chasing waterfalls.
Mankind, that word should have new meaning for all of us today.
You're gonna need a bigger boat. Snakes. Why did it have to be snakes?
I'll take care, all right? None but love for you. None but love for you.
Have any clue what's about to happen to him?
Oh, not a chance in hell. Good night.
Blow up! Peace! Smile, you son of a...
You did it. You crazy son of a bitch, you did it.
Hey.
It's not funny anymore.
TLC references. Still, nothing. I swear to you.
But as the day when the world declared in one voice, we will not go quietly into the night, we will not vanish without a fight, we're going to live on. We're going to survive. Today, we celebrate our Independence Day.